Ladies and gents, welcome back to another feature of Engineers. Today we're joined by Jeroen and Alexei from Stream. They're going to give you some massively insightful pieces around the backend and mobile, in particular iOS architecture, and what Stream do as a business. Essentially, building APIs and SDKs for chat messaging and activity feeds. But stay tuned. We're going to go into that in a lot more detail. Hi, chaps.
Hey, how you doing, Elliot?
I'm marvelous.
Cool.
I'm marvelous. How are you?
Good, but where do you want us to begin, really? Because there's a lot that we want to talk about, I think.
Good shout. Why don't we give the audience a bit of an intro into you, your backgrounds, and help us understand you a little bit more. Then let's get into the nuts and bolts of who Stream are and what you do as a business. Then break down some of the components that we had a chat about before. Kick us off, Jeroen. Who are you?
Okay. Yeah, my name is Jeroen. I live in the Netherlands. I'm a software developer by trade. I've been doing that for like 20 years now. And last 10 years, I've been focusing on iOS development. I run my own podcast called App Force One. Look it up online if you're into iOS development. Really nice. Been doing that for like 170 episodes, I think.
Cool.
Yeah, of course. I work at Stream. I'm the lead iOS developer relations. So that basically means that I run the team of developer advocates, developer relations engineers within Stream on the iOS platform. So we have like a focused group of people doing all kinds of iOS related content around the Stream product. Sounds like it's like a gazillion people, but it's actually me and two others. So it's a team of three, and cool. We just try to get the word out on what Stream does, what Stream as a product can bring to you as a customer, how you should use it. Basically trying to drive engagement, and based on that engagement, get people to look at our products. Really
love it. Good. App Force One, did you say?
Yeah, AppForce, and then the numeral 1.
Love it. We'll have something in the links below for everyone to check that out as well.
Yeah,
cool. Alexei.
Hey, so my name's Alexei. I'm a director of engineering at Stream. I've been programming for a long time now, so I've been in a few industries, worked in a few big companies. But here at Stream, I work with the backend team, and I'm the director there with a few teams under me that focus more on like distribution of data within the backend, doing the data models, making sure that we can handle as many users as possible without hiccuping or causing too many problems for the clients. And yeah, we solve those and tooling problems as well as feed the SDKs that Jeroen was just talking about.
Yeah,
that's me.
So, nice. And just to continue on what Stream is, we have like a really nice elevator pitch for that. So Stream is the #1 chat API for custom messaging apps, whether you're creating a social messaging app, a team collaboration platform, a live streaming chat feature, or anything else you can come up with. Stream helps developers rapidly ship in-app messaging with highly reliable chat infrastructure and feature-rich SDKs. You can improve your overall in-app conversion, engagement, and retention in a fraction of the time it would take to build a solution in-house. So that's what we do at Stream. But there's a lot of technical stuff happening to make that possible, because this sounds really, like slick and markety. But as an engineering company ourselves, we really like to get into the things ourselves and really help our customers hands-on, and really support them by participating in their code bases and seeing what challenges they face, so that we can hopefully solve some of those for our customers.
Yeah.
So I'd say what are some of the biggest challenges that we run into, Alexei, in regards to scaling? Because we do scale it quite a bit, I think.
Yeah, so there's some interesting features inside of the platform that cause scaling issues. Sometimes you might have a situation where you have lots and lots and lots of different channels. So let's say you have lots of one-on-one channels, like in a medical scenario. Let's say it's a medical application. So in that instance, you have to be able to effectively distribute the users across lots of small disparate pieces of data, so you don't necessarily have that like co-location of data. And on the other side, you might have something like an event that has millions or hundreds of thousands of people watching one thing and participating and engaging in that. And that has the opposite problem, where you have one core like point of data that you might want to fan out and get to the users. So those kinds of problems are ones that we run into very often and we solve for our clients and customers.
Yeah, and then on the client side of things, of course, you have iOS apps, Android apps, web applications, cross-platform SDKs that you would want to be using as a customer of our platform. Of course, all this scaling, all this basically getting the capacity to do these chat features is on the backend. But of course, as a customer of Stream, you want to be able to connect to that backend quickly. And that's where the SDK development teams come in, because you can imagine that if you want to build a full-fledged chat feature into your product, then there's a lot of things that you need to be doing and a lot of things that you need to do right. But if you use one of our SDKs specific to your platform, then you have a much easier time implementing a full-fledged chat feature that has all the bells and whistles, all the features that end users come to expect from a chat implementation. So really like just messages, DMs, making sure that you can post your Giphies as well, and a whole bunch of other things that you just want to have available in your chat implementation. And that's basically what we offer with our SDKs, based on the amazing backend that Stream has been able to build out over the last couple of years. And just to give you an idea, for instance, for iOS, because that's my specialty, if you pick up our SDK, you sign up for an account, pretty much within a week, you can have a full-fledged chat implementation live in your product on the App Store, going with potentially 10,000, 100,000, millions of end users. Really depends on the scale of your company. And that's what we try to offer to our end users, just a slick, clean, fast and reliable way to implement chat in your products.
Nice. Okay. Help us understand a little bit about the connection between backend and mobile. Then we haven't touched on this too much, outside of the podcast, but help us understand that, because I think that relationship between you two, giving an intro on yourselves and your positions within the business, that seems quite key for a really good customer experience.
Well, I can try and answer that, and then Alexei can jump in if I miss something or if there's a detail that I just don't know. It all begins with, of course, the network connections. You can imagine that if you have a lot of clients, a lot of end users, you will be dealing with a lot of scaling on the backend, because you just need to have all those TCP connections active. What we use there is Websockets, because that allows us to asynchronously communicate with our backend, so that you don't have the typical HTTP request response cycles going on, which have quite a lot of overhead. But by having a WebSocket connection on active clients to our backends, we're able to really scale out and scale up the number of end users that is actively connecting to our backends. You can imagine that there are some complexities that we need to take care of on the client side. Same goes for the server side. But basically, it comes down to when you activate our SDK and you make your process, your app active, we connect with your credentials to the Stream backend, get this WebSocket going, and then it's basically send messages when we need to communicate something to the server, and wait for any messages and information coming back from the server. And we've noticed that with WebSockets, the amount of scaling that we can do, especially with the type of backend that we've implemented, because I think we use Golang for that, we're able to really utilize all the virtual hardware, of course, because it's hosted with a cloud provider, but we're really able to saturate CPU and memory and basically only be limited by the amount of bandwidth that we need to consume to support these features.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah. So to sort of build on top of that, WebSockets are a core performance improvement performance improvement factor inside of the product. And it does allow for faster communication. We also have other kinds of RPC. We do have some REST endpoints. So if your application is offline and it gets, let's say you're on a mobile and you're in a dead zone and you come back, you do have the ability to do some RPC once you get that connection back to sort of get yourself back up to speed. There's also some push communication that comes across from the backend. We have some services to provide the ability to get those updates to devices, whether that's through Firebase or like through the iOS system itself. That depends on the platform where the SDK is running, but that is configurable and available for the clients as well. So there's different ways to get that communication there. And we even have some backend SDKs and the ability to communicate with services if you have your own backends. So most often this is used for things like custom authentication schemes. So you might have your own authentication scheme that you're very comfortable with, and you want to integrate Stream. And obviously you don't want people to log into Stream every single time. You want them to log into your app. So there's ways for your backend services to talk and collect data from Stream itself, as well as dashboard and other metrics that might come from Stream that might be interacted with through a non-SDK way, right? So,
okay, it seems like the relationship is pretty asynchronous, and what I gather from both is performance, especially from a back-end perspective, but also from a mobile perspective or a customer experience perspective, that's really critical. Would you say performance is probably one of the main engineering challenges that is present in Stream? And if it's not performance, what do you think is? Because it seems like we're talking in the millions and billions of users that actually use the platform.
Performance is very important. When you're chatting, you want an experience where you get a response in a decent amount of time. Or if you send out a message, it doesn't take like a minute for the other person to be able to even notice that you're speaking to them, right? So latency is a big thing, and latency reduction schemes. So we don't want too many bounces of the message. We use edge services in order to get the data to you faster when you do connect. But there's other aspects to performance, like you still want to retain the performance when you scale. So in those situations where the system is loaded with lots of users, that a user doesn't have a bad experience. So I would say performance is definitely a big thing. Performance and scalability, at least on the back end. There's obviously other problems that Jeroen might be able to speak to on the SDK itself.
Yeah, with the iOS side of things, of course, performance is a thing, but also the impact that our SDK has on your product as somebody implementing an iOS app or another platform. So we actively monitor the size of our binary if you add it to your product. And we have certain quality metrics in place. We want to make sure that the impact of integrating with our SDK is very much contained to what the SDK does, and that it doesn't leak out in its abstraction all over your code base. So basically what this means is that you can use our SDK as is and use our UI components as is and basically drop it in your app, and that it's like a separate path within your app, so that you have like a button or some area in your app that basically is the chat user interface, and then it's very much isolated. But of course, if you want to have a more integrated experience with the rest of your app, you can, if you want, go all the way with making custom components that use our SDKs and integrate it with your screens and make sure that users can chat exactly at the location within your product that you would want. So it's flexible what you can do, but what we provide is like a base UI component suite of user interface. And with this suite, you can just get started. But if you want to customize it, you can do it through teaming, but you can also outright replace components within the entire set of UI components. But you can also just forget about all the UI components and go straight to our low-level client. Sounds scary, but it's basically a networking client that takes care of all the authentication, all the complexities of communicating with our backend, so that you just have a clean API to talk to, and then you really use our chat infrastructure as what it is, a chat infrastructure, and anything you can come up with that you can build on top of that, that's also very much possible. Of course, our UI components are supported by our development teams. So we can really help you there. And if there's an issue, we will make sure that you can get going again and that any issues get resolved. Yep. But it's up to you as a user of our SDKs at what level you really want to integrate with our SDKs and our Stream product.
Okay. Help us understand a little bit more about your customer base or where you are present in the market. And, if we touch on that as well, some use cases of where people are using you.
We have a number of big chat customers that's interesting to mention. I will just go down the list and explain a little bit of what their use case is.
Yeah, do.
One is, for instance, Hopin. That's a online conference/meeting space. So it's a virtualized meeting space that people connect to. They can walk around with an avatar and have a chat interaction that's like proximity based. And if you are in a sort of a presentation room, there's a centralized chat feature so that anybody in that presentation space can chat with each other, also with DMs and all those kinds of features. So that's very much like reasonably sized groups of people getting together, chatting together, and that you have to make sure that everybody's up to date. Another example is, for instance, Strava. I think, if I'm correct, Strava is a app that allows you to track your activities for sports-like behaviors. So that's like running or rowing or bicycling, stuff like that, so that you can, first of all, track your progress, share your progress, but also have interaction about your progress. Because one of the things that Strava does with our chat SDK is if somebody goes out on a run, then people can support the person running by sending messages, by sending emojis, and then the user doing the run gets notifications and like readouts and shout-outs that somebody is saying, hey, well done, go for the next mile, stuff like that. And then there's like the big brand companies like Adobe and IBM. I'm not entirely sure what they do exactly with the product. It's probably going to be a lot and also a very different set of use cases. But we have to trust with these large corporations as well. And another fun, smaller company, or it's not a company, a university that is using our product is the University of Cambridge.
Yeah,
and they use the chat feature to make sure that students can interact amongst themselves, but also with staff, and make sure that they have like a secure environment to engage with their professors and each other, so that they, despite having like COVID restrictions for the past 2 years and all the living isolated at home or in your student dorm, that they still could have some sort of interaction going with each other. Yeah. And you can imagine that there's, especially if you're a student, the amount of chat messages that a single customer can potentially send is quite large. And that's another very interesting use case that I've seen develop with the product of Stream.
Yeah. Listening to some of the customers, listening to what they build products for, I can imagine there's some really interesting, well, there's two parts that I think. There's probably some really interesting challenges that you have to solve around trust and safety, authentication, but even large-scale messaging is in one chat function with hundreds of messages coming in at one time versus 100 different chat boxes with probably lower levels of messaging coming in at such time. So there's quite interesting challenges between vertical or horizontal scaling, plus the trust and safety and authentication part, because we're dealing with people in different channels.
Yeah, there's also healthcare professionals that use our product to interact with the patients. So then you have to deal with all kinds of privacy-related restrictions and make sure that any data that we store on the backend is stored in a way that we, at the minimum, adhere to any government regulations of the territory that people are using our product. But probably Alexei can tell a little bit more about this, because I see the scaling mostly along two axes. That's the number of people in a room and the sheer number of rooms that might be available. But maybe you can share about something about that, Alexei.
Yeah, that's an accurate assessment of the general scalability. There's a few other factors to it, in that one person being part of many rooms is another sort of vertical of scaling. So if you are the doctor in the scenario that you just gave, you might have n number of rooms, some of them waiting, some of them in active chat.
Yep.
As opposed to a person on the other side who just has one room. So we try to cater to all of those experiences, and the system does do some dynamic changes depending on what kind of situation it's in. So accounting for those things. For example, in how we manage unread counts, the system differentiates between those different scenarios and might follow different paths. So we always have to take that into account as we build things, because we want all of those experiences to be positive if someone's using Stream.
Okay. How do you go and build something that can scale out like that? Are you able to just touch on some of those parts?
Sure. So some of it comes to using correct storage backends and databases. So we lean on multiple ones, and we even have some that are built in-house to handle different kinds of data for different situations. Some of it leans towards having horizontal scalability of the services, so that if some go down, there's fallback. For example, the Websockets that we talked about are on a set of servlets that can dynamically scale effectively as we need capacity, more or less capacity. So there's some fan out there. And of course, as I talked about databases, is being able to have fallbacks for those as well. So if we have clear data models that are easy to access and easy to query for all of the situations, we don't have any need for super complex queries when time is involved. So we don't want to, every time a question is asked or every time a channel is joined, we don't want to do a full table scan. So there's some optimization there that specifically talks about how do we get to that point where the message actually reaches the user. Yeah.
Cool. Jeroen, where do you think some of your engineering challenges are quite prevalent?
Well, one of the biggest challenges we had on the iOS SDK in the last few months is also data related.
Okay.
Because with the chat feature, people tend to think it's an online thing, right? You are online chatting and making sure that you can send the messages. But especially with a mobile device, you're not guaranteed to have a steady connection at all. Sometimes people are offline for a couple of hours if they don't have a data plan on their cellular, or they travel abroad. Any different use case that could have like a short or prolonged duration of not being connected to the backend system. And the offline support feature that we've implemented, it's basically a local storage of what data is available on the server for this specific user. And that's a number of things. First of all, you need to store the data, but it's also a syncing challenge, because you have to make sure that once you get connectivity again, that you try and sync up again with the current state of things on the server. And what's interesting there is that we try to stick as close as possible to what Apple as a service and platform provider provides. So we've implemented our storage mechanism with core data. It has one very distinct drawback for people using our SDK, and that is that it doesn't work with Mac Catalyst. So we have a UI kit and a Swift UI based SDK, and if you would want to use that as is on the Mac platform, you cannot use Catalyst because core data hasn't been ported to Catalyst yet by Apple. But in all other cases, core data is a proven solid piece of storage technology. It's not so per se something that you would call a database, even though the underlying storage mechanism is.
Yep.
But it's more a serialization mechanism for object graphs. And we really noticed when we got started with core data initially, it was very easy to think about it as just a database. But once we made the cognitive switch from it being a database to a object graph storage mechanism, things started to click for us, and we were able to solve all our performance and stability issues that we had with core data. And I think nowadays we have a very solid offline support feature in the iOS SDK available as well, because the iOS SDK had a rough ride over the last few years, and we were playing catch up with the iOS development team that's been working on it. But now we're completely on par with the rest of the mobile SDKs that we have available within our ecosystem.
What happened over the last few years? Wrong choices?
Yeah, it was just we had some engineering challenges, and we we had some stability issues. It was like a whole plethora of small things that added together, detracted from the user experience of our customers. And we've been able, with version 4 of our iOS SDKs, to pretty much fix all the issues that we are or were aware of. And now the feedback that we are getting from our existing and new customers, it's all they're pretty much raving about what we're offering as a product, because it's a high barrier of entry with our product, because it's not something that's really cheap to get into. But if you want to have a chat feature, and if you tried it yourself, then you know what amount of effort and what amount of cost it takes to run a chat feature, and then comparatively at the price level that we offer our products, you cannot beat that. And I think right now, compared to our competition, we're pretty much beating them all across the line, really, in sense of features, capabilities, scalability, performance. And I think it's been a long road for the iOS team, but we managed to pull through. And I think we're in a very good place now with the SDK.
It seems as if the points that you touched on, speed, capabilities, features, performance, they're really quite critical to winning this game in chat messaging and activity feeds. We don't necessarily need to go into competition, but it seems those 4 elements are really key to getting this done.
Well, a big difference between the front end side of things and the back end side of things is, on the back end, if you have performance issues, to some extent, you can just throw more hardware at it. Of course, there's some cost involved. You need to make sure that you fix things, and it's always better to not need as much hardware. But on the front end side of things, you have one device, one CPU with a number of cores, but that's it. There's no horizontal scaling that you can do there. And if you saturate your CPU, first of all, you're draining the battery of the end user. Second of all, if you do that for too long of a duration, then the operating system will say, I don't know what this process is doing, but I'm evicting it from memory because I don't like what I'm seeing. So that's something why it's important to have performance in check. And also for end users, they are used to tapping on a screen and a device responding. You don't want to have glitchy things happening. You don't want to have any stuttering on the screen. You just want the experience to be smooth. And especially, I reckon the people listening to this podcast who are app developers themselves, or even web developers, well, the biggest complaint that you probably will get from your end users is when you try to scroll something and it's just not happening or it's not smooth. Then it's immediately on the table and very visible that hey, the performance is not as good as it should be. And and with an iOS device and an Android device also, it's one device. That's the environment that you have to deal with. And especially with Android, there's a whole list of devices that have a longer lifespan, have a lesser capability, less performance. So that's something you really need to take into account. And even on the iOS side of things, there are devices that are not as capable as the current flagship model. And you do want to serve those customers in a way that they feel that their product is functioning, that it is smooth and operating correctly. And it's a perception thing, because you can have a product that is perfect, that does everything that you want it to do. But if on the surface the performance seems to be out of sync, not on par, then immediately you're like 3 strikes down already. And that's what we do not want to cause with the users of our SDKs.
Yeah. Alexei, this one's probably really useful for you as well. Has the mindset shift been quite a shift coming into an API first business from a B2B, B2C mindset? Because they are 2 different things. Has that been a shift for you?
So I've done API businesses in the past, so it's not as much of a shift for me. I do feel like as engineers, like my background is as an engineer as well, you have some more familiarity with an API business because you can look at it and you can see how you would use it. So there is some benefit there in that the company itself, as it builds things, we have a set of people that can look from it from a user's point of view. Oh, an iOS developer might look at this and say, if I was building an app, how would I see this? Or a backend developer might say, if I was building a backend service and interacting with it, how would I see it? So there's some benefit there, but it doesn't detract from the same sort of customer communication that would happen in a regular B2B or B2C environment, because you're still sort of providing that service eventually to a customer, right? So it gets to someone's screen, even though you might only be providing a part of it. Right?
Okay, good answer. Okay, well, where do you think the stream will be in a handful of, not necessarily months, it's probably short term, but if we were to look at a year as an example, I can imagine market share is probably quite an appealing thing, as in how can we continue to pick up more users, more customers. But is there anything in Stream's crosshair that the business are thinking we maybe want to diversify into these areas? Or is there a vision for the business that you're able to share that doesn't necessarily coincide with spoiling anything for competition as well, or for competition purposes?
Well, that's a good one. Of course, first of all, we want to add specific features to our current products.
Yeah.
Can't really share too much about what those are, but we have some really big plans, and we are working on some really big plans that basically will put us like exactly in the lead where we want to be with anything chat related. And I think we're also slowly starting to look at adding something to the product portfolio of Stream, so that we come up with another product that would perfectly be in support of a chat feature, but can also stand on its own. Okay. So that we, as a company, also diversify a little bit our sources of income. Because right now we have a chat SDK in a feature, and we have what we call a stream type feature that is activity based. But it's like a really small product comparatively to chat. So yeah, it's as a company, we're really now getting into the build out phase of getting a larger portfolio, both in the sense of products, but also in the sense of features and in the sense of customers. And that's for the foreseeable future. It's going to be our total focus that we will be working on, and making sure that we keep our performance and quality and anything related to solid software development up to spec, so that customers getting in touch with our company, trying our products, that they are convinced that they're better off using our stuff instead of inventing it themselves. Because grabbing back to the remark that you made about API and product business, yep. I did make the transition from a product focused development to an API focused development, because with iOS development, there's a very strong tendency to have the not invented here syndrome.
Yep.
So getting third-party dependencies in, it's a thing. You don't want to do that too much. But now I am working on like the third-party thing that you want people to integrate with. So not only do you have to be good, but you have to be better than good to make sure that people get convinced and then stay convinced that your product is good, really.
Love it. Help us understand a little bit more about room for people in the teams and what that might look like if you're continuing to diversify some of the product revenue streams. That probably means building new things. That might mean hiring more people into your teams. Help us understand from both sides, if there is, what that landscape looks like for people listening, and what do they need, or what skills or thought processes do they need? Where can they come and find you?
Well, first of all, there's a number of technologies that we work with. So that's front end and back end. And basically, front end, we do native app development for our SDKs, but also with Flutter, React Native, and a number of other frameworks that we use. On the back end, I think Golang is a really big part of what we do, but there are some other technologies that we use. We have a very big presence with our products on the AWS stack.
Yep.
So it's not only development, it's also in ops, it's also in marketing, in sales, really across the board. We're looking for talent, and even if we don't have a current open position at the specific thing that you are looking for, if you are a quality candidate, definitely reach out, because for the right candidate, we always have room, even though we don't have an exact position available right now. And in the sense of what type of work that we're doing at Stream, it's highly technical. It's highly distributed across the world, because we have a very large group of people in, I think, over 140 countries, with 2 big clusters in the Boulder office in the US and the Amsterdam office in Europe. But we have people, pretty much across the world, working in all time zones. And that offers some opportunities if you want to do remote work. I myself work 100% remote, even though that I live in the Netherlands. And it's technically challenging work that you do for our customers. You want to make sure that what we deliver, it's quality, it has performance, that the engineering is top notch, and we're really working hard on getting the word out. And we really like it when our employees, if they want to, that they actually share what they're working on, go to conferences, present about what you've been working on. That's all perfectly fine. We really want to be like an active participant in the open source ecosystem as well. So we're trying to support the open source products that we use for our development. So we have sponsorships ongoing, and even if you have a good suggestion that we should support something, we're always willing to engage with our employees to take them up on their suggestions. And it's an open, informal culture. Yeah, and I can just keep going. I think if you're looking for a job, you should definitely consider Stream, because it's amazing to work with us, I think.
Alexei, do you want to double down on that? You've recently joined as well.
Yeah, I definitely want to double down on that. I mean, there's definitely lots of openings, especially as we're growing, like other products or verticals like Jeroen might have mentioned, but also just even the amount of work that we have now to have all the features that someone might want when they're looking at a chat solution, to be able to build those and polish them and make them performant. That definitely, we have space for people to do that. And in the backend teams, I think there's a lot of need for people who are self-driven and really want to work in the technology and both learn from others as well as provide their knowledge to Stream to be able to make the product better. And I think as we move forward with Stream and as we get a larger client base, maybe move into other businesses, that will only just grow. So if you feel like you fit there, you definitely should apply, in my opinion.
Regardless, anyway, we've got Jeroen's podcasting links. You can come and listen to him. We've got other links and content in regards to Stream, what they're sponsoring, what they're doing, site. Website is super clean, coherent. It gives you an indication in regards to tech stack. If you're listening and you're smart, passionate about scale, performance, customer experience, come and talk to these guys and girls. If you're Amsterdam remote, Boulder remote, or US remote, Netherlands remote, come and talk to these guys and girls. It's an absolute must. I want to say big thanks to the pair of you for coming and joining us and just talking really coherently about the business, what you do, value add to customers. It's been an awesome 40 minutes where I think people can learn a little bit more about Stream, what you're doing, and probably interacting with Stream without ever knowing that they're interacting with Stream. You do a fabulous job of doing so. So a big thanks to the pair of you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and make sure to reach out on Twitter or other socials. And links will be in the show notes. So definitely come talk to us, because we like to interact with anybody who's out there listening to this.
Good. And for everyone listening, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, with your friends in the back-end space, front-end space, mobile space, even in the product space. Go and share with your friends. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this episode. Massively appreciate you listening and checking in with us. If you want to find out more about us and what we're doing, please check us out on social media. What we're trying to do at Engineers is build a community to drive knowledge sharing and experiences. On Twitter, we can be found Engineers.io. It's no_. We've also got a website, which is engineers.io. These links will all be posted in the description. Any feedback and comments are massively appreciated. We're always looking to improve on where we can. Thanks, guys.